When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Quick quiz. What injury law firm has been helping people in the District, Maryland, and Virginia for over 35 years? That's right. It's Greenberg and Betterman. Auto accident? Medical malpractice? Get a free consultation by visiting gblawyers.com and feel better.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for checking out this bonus edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, what I want to talk about is an article that I came across a couple of days ago. And the article basically dealt with talking about how we as people, will have to go about reestablishing our connections and our communication as the world opens back up. Now, if you've been hiding under a rock at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And for a lot of people, they are socially distanced. They aren't going out. So their worlds, in a lot of ways, we all have been flipped upside down. But as we move further into 2021, there's a look and hope that things will, quote unquote, go back to normal, or at least go back to what we kind of knew as normal before March of 2020. That being said, the article kind of touched on, how we relate to each other and how we should connect. And, the pandemic really has done a lot for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And it's not necessarily all bad. It's not necessarily all good either. But one of the things that it touched on in this particular article was about, how we're going to communicate, or how we should communicate, and how we should relate, and so on and so forth. And it got me to thinking about just a couple of things that I've seen personally and also experienced as well. And it talked about just kind of skipping the small talk to get to the real of a person and get to, opening up to a deeper conversation. For example, during the pandemic, a lot of times, you would ask people, well, how are you doing? How is your mental health? How are you holding up? Oh, they'll say, basically, it's the age-old question, how are you? And, if you're, depending on how much you want to go into it, you might say, well, I'm okay, or I'm cool, I'm good, or I'm not doing too good. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, because if you ask me, how am I can tell you I'm okay. And I think that's been the default to some degree for a lot of people, particularly men. I'm okay, because you don't want to ever sound too vulnerable, particularly in a time where we don't know, because we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We didn't know that this pandemic would last as long as it has. It's been a year already. And so many lives were lost and people's lives have been flipped upside down. It's affected every single person. This is the only thing that we've gone through that has affected every single person. So with that being said, I think you have to take it a step further. So in the article talks about, instead of asking, how are you, ask them, how are you feeling? Because that opens up to a deeper conversation. Instead of, you really can't get a general answer from that. How are you doing and how are you feeling are two different things. Because sometimes if you ask someone, how are they, they might tell you about, how the week was or what they have, looking forward to in the future, whatever the case may be. But when you say, how are you feeling, you got to dig a little deeper with that. So I'm definitely for asking about how you're feeling, because it's not a right or wrong answer, and it's not a yes or no answer, to be honest. It's something where you have to kind of dig a little deeper than what's on the surface, and you got to open up and say, how you really feeling. The second thing it talked about in the article was asking someone what has been lighting you up lately. For me, that's a loaded question, because what's been lighting me up lately is, a lot of different things. But I've also found that if you want to be great at connecting with people, you must bring, curiosity into the conversation. Instead of asking them what they do, ask somebody what brings them joy, because what I do and what brings me joy could be two different things. I mean, I work. Work doesn't necessarily bring me joy. Well, it does. There's a level of satisfaction in the work that I do, but I mean, like, I don't wake up and be like, oh man, I can't wait to get started today. I'm not that kind of guy. I work for the check. I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I'll put it like that. But does it bring me joy? No, this podcast brings me joy. My regular 9 to 5, nah. But I also understand that, and I have to constantly remind myself that I sit in a place of privilege. I mean, I work from home. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to be around anybody. And to be honest, I feel a little bit more connected to my job and the people that I work with, given the fact that I work from home, than I did when I was actually in an office, if that makes sense. But yeah, you ask people what their role is, they'll start telling you about what, how many, awards they got at work and all that. Nobody wants to hear all of that. Just ask them what's been lighting them up lately. And what lights me up and what lights you up could be two different things. Again, this podcast and the ideas and the things that the creative side of this podcast really lights me up, because it gives me opportunities to think a little bit beyond the surface and just, think about the content that I want to bring to the people who listen to this podcast, as well as the people that I collaborate with, because there's a lot of joy in that. And, it's not the only thing that brings me joy. Of course, I have a family, a wife and kids. I mean, they bring me joy as well. I play sports and, I do recreational stuff. I watch TV, I watch sports. There's a lot of stuff that brings me joy. But again, if you want to connect a little bit deeper with people, ask them what has been lighting them up recently. And lastly, the article also asks you to ask the question, what is your story? And I think that's a very deep and broad question, and it requires a deep and broad answer. What is your story? Everybody has a story. Everybody has something that made them get to where they are, or they have something that is pushing them to where they want to go. On this podcast, I share a lot of stories. And I didn't realize this until somebody had made this point to me, and they said, you're a really good storyteller. And I took that as a compliment, but I also, arrogantly agreed. I am. And I think one of the things about this podcast, as far as, being able to tell stories, is that what it does is it opens you up to me, and I open myself up to you. And I also give you a chance to see a little bit beyond who I am and the experiences that have made me who I am. And sometimes through storytelling, you can make your own assumptions about who I am or who I might be or whatever the case may be. But, everybody has a story. Everybody has experiences. Everybody has things that have helped them grow and mold them into who they are becoming. So when people tell you their story, be curious. Lean in if you're face to face with them. Ask them why they chose the path that they chose. Everybody feels a sense of appreciation when you're curious about who they are. That's a fact. The easiest thing for anybody to talk about is themselves. I mean, that's the truth. Everyone feels a sense of appreciation when you're truly curious about who they are. And, when you place the spotlight on someone, they feel energetic, and in turn, that normally leads to them opening up and into a great conversation. And at the end of the day, they'll walk away from that conversation not just remembering that they talked about themselves, but they'll walk away from the conversation remembering how you made them feel. Ultimately, we're going to have to do all of these things. We're going to have to, as the world opens back up and we have more face-to-face interaction, there's a lot of people that have been isolated. So you're going to need to know, how are they feeling? You're going to need to know what's been lighting them up recently. And more importantly, you're going to want to know their story, because ultimately this will broaden the conversation and it'll help you connect with them even more. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Thank you for checking out this bonus edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5Gs.
Maybe you recognize this voice. Andy Betterman here of the injury law firm Greenberg and Betterman. For over 35 years, we've been helping people in the DMV with auto accidents and medical malpractice. Get a free consultation by visiting gblawyers.com and feel better.